Welcome back to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in. Welcome back to Turn Down for What. Another day,
Another episode.
another episode. Here we go. Sorry for missing last week. We did actually miss a week on the podcast. We've been going for well over a year now, and I don't think we've skipped a week, maybe one. But it's been kind of a chaotic couple weeks for Jesse and I in business, but also recently, as many people across the nation would be aware, as we had the big hurricane that came up and really caused a lot of devastation in eastern Tennessee and western Carolina. Jesse and I are headquartered in eastern Tennessee, about 10 miles from where most of the devastation has taken place. And so we've kind of been putting our boots on and our hard hats on, if you will, and trying to do what we can for helping out the community. And so that just has created a little bit of chaos and scheduling. And leaving after this episode to go take water to a remote area just to assist. But I put it out on LinkedIn and some of the other channels. But if you are listening and you have any desire to figure out a way to be of assistance to some of the devastation that's taken place in Western Carolina or Eastern Tennessee, if you're in the area and you need help, please reach out to us. We are here to help. We're definitely happy to help. But if you're not local, then definitely we have a link available if you wanted to contribute towards the relief efforts that are taking place in Eastern Tennessee, Western Carolina. So definitely a lot. I mean, it's crazy. Really, honestly, I don't think the full news reporting has come out of North Carolina yet. It is there's a lot going on there that I've seen from some of the context I have on the ground there. It's a bad situation. It's based on what they're saying. I mean, there's never been a flood like this at all in our area ever. It's the 100-year flood mark. 1901 was the last time we had anything close, but it wasn't this bad. So I mean, it's a once in a forever, I guess, instance as far as this type of damage and issues. And a lot of people have had homes, but they're not in a flood zone. And so they don't have flood insurance, and insurance won't cover devastation created by floods. If it comes from underneath, like, the flood comes and rather than like a tornado wiping your house out, that's covered, but a flood is not covered. And so a lot of people are going to be in a real difficult situation. So just trying to figure out how we can best be of help since we're here, and obviously trying to see how we can best help. So,
It
anyways,
was
that being said, long tangent, but
that was crazy to see the pictures that you shared when I reached out to you guys, and whole roadways wiped out and dams that looked like they were spilling over, and that stuff lingers. It's not just like a storm that comes and goes, and that flooding. We know how powerful water can be, and I know there's a lot of missing people and a lot of people um, needing support. So I love seeing what you guys were doing out there, being way out here on the West Coast. We're fortunate that we don't see that type of storm really ever. We'll get some atmospheric rivers, but it's nothing like that. My parents are in Pensacola, Florida, and they were really lucky. It kind of skirted to the east of them, and so they got the weaker side. And but I kind of know through their experience and lens how that can be. But that one was uniquely powerful, it seemed, and seeing it
yeah,
that far
most of the
inland.
times they're slow moving, and so they kind
Yep.
of come up the coast, and so we get rain, but it's never like that. This was moving so quickly that I think it almost hit us at what would be considered a Cat 1. It was probably a tropical storm by that time, but our area is not used to receiving that, and being off the mountains, all of the offlow that comes out of that into the riverways. It's just nothing that the dam system that we have was prepared for. So we had dams breaching, and it was a big mess.
Yeah, to
Uh,
give a perspective on the amount of water. So, one of the dam systems on the Nolichucky River estimated that nearly double the amount of water was going through that system per second than what comes out of Niagara Falls. So, when you
wow.
look at Niagara Falls, you can nearly double that amount of water. That's how much water flow was going through this. And it is not a river that's supposed to be that big. So, it
It's
did
not
strain a
anything
lot
like
of
Niagara
systems.
Falls. That
Yeah.
image
Yeah.
that we sent you, Chris, and I'll share it here. But I mean that was double the outflow as the Niagara Falls, which is just insane. Um, but yeah, lot more to come. I mean, our two major interstates connecting Tennessee and North Carolina washed out, and bridges are out. So I mean, like that's a long term crisis for moving goods and services. And I mean, it's just there's going to be a lot of more issues to come out of this than just the immediate devastation. So definitely something to contribute to if you want, and if it's on your heart. And we'll definitely continue to plug in as we can in our community and see how we can best kind of get over all that. So
Glad to see you guys safe and back, and we'll get to some more uplifting news.
yeah. So on the pivot, let's move on to go back to EV news and updates. Today, Chris, I'll let you do the introduction.
Yeah, this is we're really privileged today to have with us one of the legends in the Ford community, Tim Bartz, goes by the Ford Video Guy from Long MacArthur Ford in Kansas, and we're just couldn't be more excited with the timing of the announcement today. Tim, welcome to Turn Down for What?
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, a lot of EV news coming out last week. So
Yeah, it's been exciting times. You know, these things tend to ebb and flow, and you get some news that kind of deflates you for a little bit, and then I don't know if you guys get privy on your end when things are coming, or if you're as surprised as we are when these things get launched. Do you kind of learn when we do?
for the most part, yeah, I a couple sometimes I'll get because I'm kind of considered media now for Ford. I've been invited to a couple media events, but for the most part, I don't hear about it until everybody else does. Like the pricing that we're going to probably talk about, that I found about that today. So that's we don't get a I think actually maybe got the email from we get notifications for dealer information. I think it came over maybe at 11 o'clock last night, but
Yeah.
it was mainly made for the dealers for today. So
Well, for those in the community that haven't heard, they've got a whole initiative where they're talking about, home is where the charge is, and it's something that we've talked about. EV ownership and being able to charge at home is really the secret sauce. And if people are able to do that and experience it, they're not going to give back an EV if that's their setup. And for so long, other manufacturers have focused on the idea of even Ford to some extent limited, but the idea of some free Electrify America miles or EV Go or even Tesla early on. There's still people with free Tesla supercharging for life. And that's just not the best EV ownership experience. And it ends up kind of, especially now at the scale, really kind of clogging up a lot of the EV infrastructure that we do have out there that's needed for travel. So kind of hearing that, they call it the power promise. I think it alleviates a lot of kind of the anxiety for a new EV owner. And there's even a little nugget in there for those of us that are existing. Josh, I'll send you the link so you can put it down there. Those of us that are existing owners, I signed up this morning and you can get 24/7, 365 support, even on holidays. It's like an extra layer in addition to what's been there for roadside assistance, where you can have a live chat with a real person. They can even tell you if you're coming up short to a local charger. And so there's a lot of great stuff there that's just, I don't think I'll ever use it, but I loved being able to sign up because, one day maybe I'll be a knucklehead and try to out of spec it a little bit too close and be out there in the middle of Kansas somewhere to go visit Tim and die just short, and they can bring me over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the use case of helping people and equipping people with electrifying their homes is a crucial piece. I mean, I was given the charger, but I mean, obviously with this incentive, do one of you want to actually explain exactly what the announcement was? That way, the audience can know. I know there's incentives around the charging, but to those who may not know, what is Ford doing for their consumers?
Yeah, Tim, you want to kick that off? You got
Sure.
all the info there.
yeah, so the Power Promise is starts actually today, and it runs through January 2nd of 2025. So anybody that purchases a Mach-E, a Lightning, even an E-Transit for regular customers, not for fleet or for businesses, but anybody else gets an E-Transit as well. If you purchase one, then you get a free home charger, and it's the 48 amp, in case the Ford Charge Station Pro. So those that now, which isn't a huge deal, big deal, but some of the Lightnings could use the 80 amp charger, but when they switched over, and was it 24 or maybe it's 25?
Yeah, 24.
Yeah, to where the 80 amp really isn't any useful anyway. So This is a pretty good charger. 48 amp is adequate enough to charge anybody's car overnight. But so that's going to come with the vehicle. Now there is, and then also the installation too, to have it installed. And they said standard installation, I think. So I don't know if that means, what the cost is, but this is all supposed to come from the dealer. So the charger is supposed to be delivered at the dealer. So the dealer can decide to have some of these in hand. Like we purchased a couple so that they're here. We have two that are right here physically here. So when somebody buys one of ours, then we can just deliver it with the vehicle and then they can set
Great.
up the charging and then we're supposed to reimburse them back the cost of the charging. And then Ford reimburses us back or something. So it's actually part of like a rebate in a sense for us as dealers. We just make sure we put that right code in when they purchase their Lightning or Mach-E or E-Transit, and then they get that. The customer doesn't have any out of pocket, which is nice because
Yeah.
I ran for a year with the Lightning. I got one of the 22s. Couple years, when it first came out, had that for about a year, and I didn't ever have a home charger. I was just plugging in. I was using my little mobile charger, and then because I didn't drive a lot unless I went on a trip, and then I just used my mobile charger to charge in my garage. And then I have a Mach-E now that I purchased in June, I guess. And I'm right now doing that. Actually, I charge more at work than I do anywhere. But I need to put one of these chargers in because I find myself, I'm probably going to always be driving at least one EV in the family. So I think it's important. It's important for Ford because they know that if somebody has a home charger, like you're saying, they're more likely to keep or repurchase another EV and hopefully stay in the Ford family for that need. Plus, it'll be much better experience for them if they're leaving the house with a full charge, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, that's how it works. Now, dealers that don't sign up, then the charger gets sent to them from Ford, I believe, and the dealership pays for that cost or whatever. But so the dealership can choose to do what they want. We're gonna make sure we keep a couple in stock at all times during this promo deal. So
I love that you guys always go that extra mile too, and you have them there available. It's I know there's some details there. So if somebody already has a charger at home, they can take a $2,000 credit, I believe. And then the standard installation is like no trenching, for example. So if you have like a detached garage and there's not already a conduit in existence, that won't pay for the trenching. That would be extra.
yeah,
I think there are still some fleet 24s that do the 80 amps, but otherwise, yeah, they're the single
yeah,
48 amp charger. But some people may already have one, or may want to have the 80 amps if they wanted to install that bigger breaker, that 100 amp.
yeah,
That would be extra. But the standard 60 amp breaker for the 48 amp service, I think 100 feet of run, that's kind of all included. And so I think to your point, I was much like you, Tim. I started with the mobile connector plugged into my dryer plug, and then saw the stories of like, maybe that's not a great idea to use a dryer
yeah.
plug that's not meant.
No.
So I quickly pivoted and did the install to a real legit charger. And
Mhm. Yeah,
and I think having that be available from the start. I think they're using Q Merit as one of the partners, which I know like Tom Malogny has talked a lot about being a reputable folk, that they also do the Tesla home integration system, the Sunrun home integration system. So you're getting some good support there. I know at least from them. There, I'm sure there's other partners as well, but I know that's one of the big ones too.
yeah,
Yeah, when I
yeah,
bought my truck, I mean, obviously it came with the 80 amp charger at the time, and that was what they were doing was that all the vehicles came with it. And now since it's obviously an extra charge, but I was using just the dryer. I had right next to my breaker box, I just put a dryer plug in because my charger hadn't arrived yet, and it took 3 weeks after delivery to get that charger. I think it was probably closer to a month, and so I had immediately wired in just a dryer plug just right below my box because it was easy to get the wire and put in that extra breaker service for that. And I was using that as my charge service for a while, and I got the charger in and just didn't install it, but realized that pretty quickly that it wasn't going to be sufficient for my driving habits. The for those who may not be aware, I mean, you can plug the vehicle technically into just a traditional receptacle, but that's going to take like 4 days to charge your car. You can then go to a dryer size outlet. And in that regard, it would take, about 16 hours roughly if you're low to get back up to full. But then, obviously once I got my 80 amp charger installed, it can do it in 6 hours. And so overnight, the difference became that I could come home empty and be able to leave that next morning and have the 90% recommend charge range. If I was leaving out of town or whatever, again, I could get all the way up to 100% overnight, which was the big difference for me. But the other variable is with that having the higher source power, like you're saying, it definitely encourages home charging more for the local driver, which I think is a huge part of the EV experience because that's where the cost savings come in. The using public infrastructure currently it costs as much as gas or relatively similar to the cost of gas, especially in a Lightning or a vehicle like that because of the amount of kilowatts you need and the rate that they're charging you. It's going to cost almost as much as it does to refuel with gas. Charging at home is 10% of the cost of gas, if not less, depending on I mean, maybe out in California with Chris, it's like 50%
Yeah,
power
it's a bit
cost.
crazier.
But in East Tennessee, where power is 11 cents, 10 cents a kilowatt, it is much, much cheaper. And that's where most of the financial savings come into place is charging from home.
We did
And the
just
third thing is
now,
opening the
starting October is our winter rates. So we dropped from 60 cents a kilowatt all the way down to the screaming deal of like 46.
wow.
So
what a deal. I can't comprehend how amazing that deal is for you
wow.
there.
I did wait. I let my battery get really low just so I could charge up, now that it's October and get back, save a few pennies. I'm cheap that way.
You slid into October at 0% battery because you
Right.
were stalling. You didn't plug your vehicle up yesterday, but you plugged it in this morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and the third thing is, I mean, obviously, as we discussed at the beginning, in times of crisis, a lot of people don't realize it, but I have a power bank. We all lost power for a few hours, and some people are still out of power, but there is no there a lot of people undervalue that aspect of it. And with the higher charger that gives you the bi-directional capability at the 80 amp charger to potentially power your house if you have the appropriate equipment in place. And in certain situations like this, I mean, that is a game changer. In our area, when we see power lines wiped out, it's going to be months before these people have power. And being able to take your vehicle and bring it back, you're going to be able to pull a Ben Westby, if you will,
Yeah.
and go into town every day and charge up your vehicle. But then you can actually have power at your house with that setup. In some of these areas, where it's months and months before they're going to see power again.
Shout out to Ben, the true pioneer of using the lightning to power his entire world up there in Colorado. So really great stuff that he's doing.
Inspirational. But I mean, in a
Yeah.
moment like this, I mean, I'm taking my trucks to places and say, plug your things up, because I mean, they're desperately looking for generators to bring into these locations because there's no power and there's not going to be any for a long time. But having an EV plugged into your house, you have a battery bank. I had posted it on X once upon a time, and Jim Farley actually retweeted it. But there was a power outage about 6 months ago over the winter time frame, and I was just doing a puzzle with my wife with the lights out. We were just sitting there. She's like, "I really want a cup of coffee." And I was like, "Well, that's a pickle." Well, guess what? Just opened the frunk, plugged up the coffee maker, and made me a cup of coffee in the middle of a power outage. And whether it's for coffee or powering your house for 3 to 5 days or whatever the recommended range is, EVs have that type of benefit. And so with this offer to help with the charging aspects, it's encouraging that at-home behavior. And obviously the 48 amp charger is not capable of the bi-directional. I don't even have the full bi-directional, but having your car at full at your house prepares you for those moments. That way you can, even if it's just running a receptacle or an extension cord into your house, you can run those essentials. I had a family member that had their freezer go down for 2 days, and I went to their house. They plugged the freezer up to my truck to get it back cold again to make sure that their goods didn't go bad. And that's something that you can't do with with a regular vehicle. So just some unique stuff that the Lightning and other EVs can provide in times of need. So
Now, Tim, for clarity, I think it is actually it's the Charge Station Pro, right? It's the big one. It's the one that can do bidirectional charging, right? Or is it the Pro charger?
I believe it's the 48 amp Ford Charge
Hmm.
Station Pro, I think is what it is. Is that the
The Charge Station Pro is actually the big one. It's the big
is
80.
it?
Yeah, and I think you just derate it. I think they're only gonna install the 60 amp
Breaker.
hardwired, and then and then they derate it. They'll have to derate it down to 48 amps. But it
Oh.
is actually so like I have the standard range, and even though I can't do the 80 amps with my 22, it
Hmm.
still had the capability for bidirectional if I went that way, even at 48, because it's using those DC pins of that CCS connector. So it'll still have that. My understanding, it'll and you
I'm
can
looking at
maybe
it here.
yeah, I think it's
Um,
because there's the Pro charger is the kind of smaller 48 amp. But I think what they're doing, to be honest with you, is I think they've got a big inventory of these Charge Station Pros,
probably.
and they're like, hey, let's
They
make this a
stopped giving them
win-win,
away for free with the truck. I mean, that would cause an inventory surplus, I'd imagine.
right?
Um,
Yeah.
maybe they should do the same thing with the adapter. Maybe then they'll have some excess inventory because there's still people waiting for it.
Yeah,
But
but
the
that's
Charge
my
Station Pro,
understanding.
I mean, I don't have it wired up with the inverter that I can use to power my house,
Yeah,
which is like a $4 or $5,000 upgrade. But that's something that I mean, having that charger
it's
in place, if I
capable.
ever wanted to install that, it will happen. And when I build a house, I will build that into my house because I lose power twice a month, probably, even if it's just for an hour.
Mm.
Having the ability to flip a switch and be able to run my house, it's just a convenience thing that, with kids and food and all this stuff. I mean, we're in a society where now we have the capability to flip a switch and be able to run our house off of our vehicles, and having that technology and integrated is huge, especially with the size of these batteries that we have just sitting in our garages.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think people forget all the time. I'll hear people say like, "Oh, power outage. What are you going to do with your truck?" Well, I know the storm is coming, so I'm full up, and your gas pump's not going to work on electricity. I promise you that. So it's
Mhm.
we're kind of in the same boat with that regard. You're going to have to travel and charge or refuel either way. But in
And
the
if you're
meantime, I've
Chris and
got
you generate your own power, so I mean, even
yeah,
if the whole grid goes down, you still, I mean, you're in a real great situation there.
I've got the solar. I can go as long as I've got any type of sun. I can go almost infinitely in my house.
During the day, you charge your battery, and at night, you use your battery to charge to run your house, and then you're set.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, everybody obviously won't have that option, from a cost standpoint, but we can see that these trucks could have been used for that in these different situations, especially with what's going on here. And that obviously brings us back to a microgrid. If you have a community with 15 or 20 of these trucks that can go back onto the grid, potentially you can have a situation where if you have the right battery storage system, that you can start doing grid cells and start getting your community up and running. Because obviously these areas, some of these cities have no power whatsoever coming into the city, just from the damage. So perhaps it's a good learning experience to see how in the future we can integrate vehicles like this. Obviously, Ford dealerships like yours in Kansas is doing a great job in coming up with not only here's what we can do to help, but here's what we can do extra to help. And that's one of those things that whether it's an ice storm in Kansas, you have a lot of spread out areas there that I think would benefit even more if power goes out. Well, now you can use your truck as that backup system. And as people do integrate, I think one of the other areas that we need to come up with a much Ford's giving these chargers away that or providing them under these programs, which is great. But the other part is how can we lessen the cost to connect my truck to my house? Because right now it's going to run what, $2,000, $3,000 for the hardware to do that. So maybe that is a system that could be integrated in the truck itself to where you have an easy way, as long as you have those adapting systems that can do that. So anyway, looking into some of your other programs, is there any other insight that you have? Because obviously you do a lot of work with the Maverick. When the Maverick came out, I thought that was a fantastic truck.
Yeah, great
We've heard
truck.
rumors of it potentially being from the hybrid version moved over to an electric small truck. I come from a time where you had the S10 and the Ranger with the small pickup truck. So when I see the Maverick, that reminds me of that small Ranger that you could just get in and go and get that mileage. Do you have any insight on where some of those directions projections are going or any growth that Ford's looking at that the dealers have heard for those areas?
No, I mean, I haven't heard much. I mean, my feeling on the Maverick is that these Maverick owners are getting 500 to 600 miles on a tank of gas, these hybrids. So I don't know if they're too interested in doing a plug-in or a electric for that Maverick yet. But we know that the Ranger is supposed to be, it has the plug-in hybrid version in Australia, and usually we'll see whatever they get a year later in the US.
Mm.
So I don't know if we're going to get a plug-in Ranger or not. That would be nice. I like the plug-in. I think that would be I like to see more vehicles be plug-in hybrid because it achieves like for, somebody that's has that range anxiety for those long trips. It kind of squashes that because then you have that hybrid for that, and then you can go in an EV mode just around town commuting and everything. I like to see that. So having that in the Ranger, I think, is a big deal. I know that Farley had said that every model will have a hybrid or electrified version within its capabilities by I don't know what year that was, but in the future, I think by 2030 or something. But so we have that with the Maverick. The Ranger hopefully is coming with the plug-in. I don't know, but I know there was talks. Ford Authority put out today that the next refresh of the Expedition would be hybrid. But we haven't actually. They don't tell the dealers a lot. We do have a dealer meeting every year. And so they'll highlight us. There's some things coming up on some of the models we know about, but when it comes to electric, they really haven't, outside of what they've told everybody else, they haven't told dealers anything else out around that. So, yeah. So,
They've had to pivot a lot when it comes to the electric. I think they're still trying to find their footing. I personally would love to see an electric Ranger and Maverick, but I think the battery technology, you can't get enough to get into that smaller form factor to give it the range that it needs. Just the chassis itself is so small. And maybe as we get into semi-solid state and solid state, different densities, maybe that'll change a bit. But yeah, that when you're getting 400 or 500 miles out of a Maverick, I mean, that thing is just screaming off the lots. At least out here in California, everybody loves the Maverick, and
mhm.
it's crazy how the sizes of trucks have changed too. Because a Ranger when I was growing up is not looking like the Ranger does today. Those
Yeah.
Raptor Ranger has got to be one of the just meanest looking great
Yeah.
trucks to drive around. And
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated with dealers, man. I'll tell you one of the first books I ever read about business and customer service. And I don't know if you're familiar with this book, Tim. It's called Customers for Life, and it's a book about customer service, and it's based on a dealership and how this family dealer saw customers as a customer for the life cycle. And it was one of the very first business books I ever read. And it was fantastic. And this was all the way back for me in the 90s. But it's always stood with me. And I've always been fascinated by the dealers. And since I've read that book, every dealer experience is kind of informed by having that as my foundation of what good looks like. And I've always want to drop that book off when I have less than that in terms of an experience. And then, there's dealers that you hear great things about. You guys are one of them. I'll say Ford Country out in Henderson, Nevada. I don't know if you guys are familiar with each other very much because there's so many
Mm.
dealers, but that one is a tremendous dealer. They've got a whole Mustang Sally's diner right next to their service area. It's just, man, it's phenomenal. Check out my
Huh.
personal YouTube page, Bo Family EV, for my trip to Vegas, and I show it off. It's a great diner, and they have two DC Ford Chargers installed there. Like they're all in,
Mhm.
and then even outside of Ford, like we hear a lot about like Fort Collins Kia. There's a lot of screaming deals and just gives people an honest value. And so I'd love to kind of turn back the clock, Tim, and hear about your journey. How did you get to Long MacArthur Ford? Where did you start? How many dealers have you been with? And I'm really curious with the different, where does that culture come from? Does it come from the ownership group? Does it come from the general manager of each dealer? Because you can experience something totally different within 20 miles of each other.
Mhm.
And so I don't think it's a Ford thing. Each one is kind of just a franchise culture. So
Mhm.
tell us your story and what you've seen in that experience.
Yeah, I'm 2001 was when I started in the car business at Long MacArthur. So this is the only dealership I've ever been at. It kind of was actually just hey, I'm just looking for something now because I had my previous job that it was at, the business was closing down. Joked with the my brother-in-law is actually he's the general manager now, GSM at that time. I said, "Hey, you need any salespeople?" Just joking, one night at dinner, and he goes, "Yes, actually I do." And he had back then he had it in his mind that I kind of knew a lot about computers. So back then, that day, if you knew about computers, then that's where your internet managers came from. So if you know computers, then you know how to do internet sales. And it's like, well, it's not quite the same, but that was their thought process. So that was his thought was, hey, I'm going to bring him in and make him the internet manager. And that's exactly what he did. So I sold cars for about 6 months. And remember, this is right before 9/11. So I started April before 9/11. So that's how long I've
Yeah.
been here at the dealership. But I actually started the internet department. Um, um, and that fall, so they took me over and we just started doing internet sales. But back then, fax would come in if somebody got on our website or something and they submitted a lead. It came in as a fax, so we went and grabbed the fax and here you go, here's a lead. Call them or email them, and that's the way it was handled. And then it's evolved over time, of course. And I was one of the first dealers that on Auto Trader we would have all these new vehicles and a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of times Ford has certain builds. They'll pump in orders for dealers based on configuration that they can build. So they did this just recent with Maverick, and if a dealer's not paying attention, they get stuck with those vehicles. So you might get stuck with a dually two-wheel drive or something in Kansas where nobody uses two-wheel drive around here, and go, now I got to try to sell this. So I would put those vehicles on as new vehicle or on Auto Trader as used and put in there, this is a new vehicle, never been titled, 0 miles. And I was selling those like crazy, but I had the time to be able to put those on there, picture them up and everything, because on the used you could do that with pictures. Um, and so we had a lot of dealers around that didn't like that. So I ended up getting in trouble after a while, but I was getting creative of finding ways to move inventory, especially these new vehicles that we were getting stuck with as dealers, on these. And I was selling to people down in Oklahoma and Texas that would drive up and pick them up and such. So that just kind of started kind of spitballing from there, and it just kind of took over. And video came in, several years ago, many years ago, and I said, well, I'm going to try this and then hand it off to the sales guys, was the hope. And so it did pretty well. And then it never got handed over to sales guys. So then they just said, okay, we're going to take you off of the sales desk and then you can devote more time to video. So it's kind of like, so now I spend, majority of my time, creating videos and doing the live stream, which actually came about from the Maverick community. Because there's a lot of people that are in the Mavericks now that came from other vehicles instead of Ford. They weren't Ford buyers, which is really unique. So a lot of them were new to the process of way Ford orders and builds and delivers vehicles, and then of course COVID helped that as well, because at that time of COVID they were only building your vehicle if you ordered it. So we're going
Yeah.
to build the ordered vehicles first and then stock it, if we can, we'll do it, because they cut back on the production. And so we had to tell customers we have no inventory. So if you want one, you have to order one and you're going to have to wait. And so that was, my videos became very popular at that point in time, because I would, the way I do those breakdown videos, and such. So, but anyway, it's kind of how it's kind of started and where I've evolved and everything. But I will tell you, the culture is within a dealership. So our owners, our GSM, our GM now, my brother-in-law, he's the GM.
Congratulations to your
But
sister.
but it's all about coming down. It's all about the management wanting to have a better experience. And we always say that to have happy customers, we need to have happy salesmen selling to these customers, so that creates that great experience. And for the sales guys to be happy, our management needs to be treating them right. And so it just stems down from the top, from leadership on down to the customer. So if they want a great experience, then we need to deliver that to our sales guys and keep them positive and keep them the process, as transparent and everything as we can. So, that's kind of the feeling. But I believe it is an ownership, owners, the leadership that starts that and initiates that kind of experience, because there are a lot of dealerships out there. I hear it all the time on a live stream and
Yeah.
where else. There's a lot of dealerships that still are old school sales, and you don't get that type of experience. And I think that's why we have people that will drive all over the country and come buy a vehicle from us and drive their vehicle home, because they don't, they're tired of that that experience. They want that transparent buying. You're not going to change the price on me. You're going to honor that price from when I ordered, that kind of stuff. And um, they don't have to wonder if it's going to happen. So anyway.
So are you saying that your customer service is so good that you somehow got Morgan Wallen out of Tennessee to go to Kansas to get his truck and drive it back to Nashville? Or is that just an isolated event where he showed up to the dealership? Tell
That
me more about this.
Okay, so that it was there was two of them, two country singers. I can't think of the other one now, but
Hardy, yeah.
yes, that happened because they worked actually for with Roush for their Super Duty. Roush is like, what dealer has inventory or has vehicles that are been scheduled for production? Because back then there weren't Super Duties sitting on lots at that time. We had Super Duties that were in the mix for the correct build that they needed. So we were the dealer that actually had inventory of production vehicles that could be drop shipped for Roush to get the builds done. So then we actually end up being the ones that sold in the vehicle. So they end up buying our inventory in a sense. So that was kind of a lucky. We got lucky on that one. So
But you guys are known for your performance
yeah,
department out there, and
yeah.
so a little bit of luck, but it's also, luck is from the hard work and established reputation. I'm sure you got that allocation because
Mm,
that is what you're known for and what you do. So
yeah,
I think that's a huge deal. And
yeah.
like I love your videos, man. I will. Yours are right there. With like out of spec for me, where I've got to watch them and rewind them multiple times. And you did a video recently where you were going through all of the different models that were coming out and when they would and I can't even remember the terminology. I literally had to keep watching it as you were explaining like when it would be scheduled and all the different dates and what was coming up through the end of the year. And you would explain that dealers need to put in their orders by a certain date.
Mm,
And I think you were even talking about how they would say, like Ford would tell you, hey, we're trying to move, like you would say, this dually or this, this, I guess it would be a body, but without a frame, or a frame, but without the thing on it. You were just going through all the different things they were trying to get people to push. And then you even said that some, like if they, if they have extra stuff that hasn't been allocated, they'll just push it to the dealer. Like they'll just put
mhm.
it on there.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, because if
that's,
we have allocations, but we don't have any retail orders, then they need to put stock orders in. Well, Ford will know that like on Maverick we had like 60 allocations, and so they pumped in a bunch of Mavericks of what they know they can build because right now or at that time. The tire that's put on the XL and XLT was very constrained because they also put on the Bronco Sport. So what they needed was they needed some orders that didn't have that tire, and that meant you had to have this other configuration. So they pumped in a bunch of orders for us with that configuration. So we're sitting there going, well, "What? We don't want this build, because like for one, it was the lariat trim. It's like, but we've found for us most of our Mavericks, if we had somebody that didn't take a Maverick, that lariat is the one that sat there. People want the XL XLT. They're looking at the Maverick because it's an inexpensive vehicle or truck or whatever. And so we were like, well, we don't want those. And so, um, you know, as dealers, a lot of dealers may not know that those orders don't have to stay the way they order them in there. You can actually go in and you can tweak that order. You can change them, even though the Ford put them in there. You can't change some of the things like the body code, the motor, that kind of stuff. You can't change, but you can change some of the packages and such. So that's what we did on some of those. And if it's like that where it's a lariat, well, we made sure we put in a bunch of our own orders with a lower priority so that those would get built instead of what Ford is wanting us to build, which, and so that's what we did. In fact, I did a video yesterday on the Maverick of here's what Ford wanted us to build, which was a Maverick XLT all-wheel drive with an Eco. And so then but with this other wheel and tire. Well, they don't tell you what tire you're getting. Well, we found out when one came in that it's the same tire they put on the trimmer package. So it's the Wild Peak Falcon. And so we're like, oh, wait a minute. Here's a story here because if you kind of want the trimmer off-road capabilities, or
yeah.
here is a great way of getting it for 4 grand less because this has the same tire and it's actually the same wheel design as the trimmer. And one of the lacking factors on the trimmer is you can't get it with the 4K tow package. You can limits to 2,000. Well, we put 4K tow package on these. because we know a lot of people, if they want an eco, they probably want to tow with it a little bit. So now they're not maxed at 2000. So we added the 4K tow package for like 600 or $800.
Yeah.
And so we're like, this is a good build because now you have, if you want a trimmer, but you want the towing, this is a great option for $31,000, 32, and you could put a nice suspension in. You're almost the same offered capabilities as a trimmer. So that story, and so that's how we kind of tweak some of those orders for that because Ford will do that, and a lot of dealers don't know that they can actually tweak the orders to get what we know the customers actually will buy. So
That's why I
um,
love your videos because you explain how there's different priority numbers, and the lower the priority number, the more
yeah,
it's gonna get built sooner, and all these options. The dealers have to be watching you and learning as much from you as any customer ever does because you really do a great job of breaking it down. Any
yeah.
idea like what percentage of your audience is dealers? Do you hear from other dealers like, thanks for breaking this down?
Occasionally, I will. I'll have a couple dealers that I know that are on, but we do have, I don't know percentage wise, but yeah, there's a pretty good chunk that are our dealers as well, and it helps them out, and even sales managers at other dealers that have
Yeah.
watched, and because I learned a lot of the stuff that I get from the GM here, because he's very like learning that, like knowing that stuff is something that he has caught on to. He's very smart and doing this for a long time, and so he's relayed that to me because that's what we tonight's live stream. That's I talk about scheduling, and that's when you're talking about that. That's I cut that as its own video for Wednesday. If people don't want to watch our live stream, our longer live stream, they can watch just that information. That if they have an order and they know, hey, okay, I have a bed cover on my order. That's probably why it's not getting selected. A dealer has a select number of allocations, then they're going to pick the other vehicles that don't have that because their production of tonneau covers 2%. So that's going to hurt my order. So take it off. Let's put it on at the dealer instead, and that gets it built quicker. So I talk about that in those videos. But
Great
yeah,
insight. And I love the example of the Maverick too, because it's such an approachable truck. It's such an approachable vehicle for a first time truck buyer. And it is such great value. And I think that is when I think about the EV space, I think that's been the biggest obstacle is that, and this new initiative is going to help make it more approachable, but the pricing still, I don't know what you're seeing out in Kansas, but that's what I hear a lot of times is just the price. Even though the Flash is a good value and the XLT, which is typically your value trim for your Mavericks and Rangers, it's still a long. You're talking 35, like you were saying, right? And you're just man, we're in the mid to high 50s and 60s, even with the great deals. And do you?
mm,
What's your sense? Because out here in California, where so many vehicles, 20% of them are EVs, and I'm surrounded by EVs, and everything's off the scale here in terms of what cost of living and pay scale. I think it's easy in my bubble to lose track. And when you're out there in the heartland, what's the number? Like, what's the obstacle? Is it price? Like, if these things were more cost competitive, would it get them to move, or is it deeper? Is it and we've talked on this show about the politics of it and how that's gotten. I hate that politics and technology have gotten mixed. What's your sense of what's it going to take to really drive electric in a better way?
yeah, I think for at least around here, we're seeing less and less people with the Maverick introduction of the Maverick. We're seeing less and less people like we were in a big farming area. We get less people that we're struggling to sell the F-150 because they'll drive where that F-150 was the car they took, did most of the running around, hauling stuff in the back and that kind of stuff. And they found that, hey, well, I can get a Maverick EcoBoost 4K tow and that's enough. And so they're saving their farmers are all about saving money. So, hey, I can get this truck for 30 instead of, 50, 60. I'm going to do that. So we're seeing the F-150 is starting to be a struggle for us to sell at that, at that price range. But I think for the EVs, like the Lightning for us, for here in Kansas, we have to discount our Lightnings almost $10,000 before we can sell them. So, and we know Ford does give us some, as long as we're doing all of our training and everything, we get in a sense, a dealer cash that we can discount that down. And so, we're not really making a lot on these, but sometimes when it's like, of course, your $7,500 tax credit's kind of figured in. We figure that into the discount because that can be applied right away. And so we're still discounting, $5,000, our Mach-E is about the same way. I think they're on, I don't know if we have any Mach-E's in stock right now. I think we sold our last rally, but I think we had those $5,000 off. So that's usually where we found that we have to get to sell them. Because when we do things we have a pricing, and Tuesday is one of the days we do that, where we actually go through our vehicles, every single model. We see what have we sold, what are we pacing for, what do we need to sell, what do we have coming in, and try to adjust and move this inventory. So it's constantly flowing and getting off of our books. And so we do that on a weekly basis, so we're not caught, at the end of the month going, well, we did have a bad month on F-150 sales. We can adjust our prices. F-150s now we have them 15 grand off,
Wow.
and because we have to move them. So we take some of that money because when you sell a new vehicle, so many, Ford gives the dealer, you know, credit or money or whatever towards that. And a lot of and a lot of dealerships will just take that money as profit for the owners, because that doesn't relate down to the sales guys. What we do is we take that money and we actually put it in an account, and we offset our vehicle or inventory cost, so that way we can have a $15,000 vehicle off, and our sales guys are still making the money they would as if it was sticker, that kind of thing. So that's what we try to do, and so we use accounting a little bit differently in that case.
I love
Um,
that.
but
I love that culture that you guys have there, and I think that's just a reflection of it. We've only got about 10 minutes here left, and I'd love to. I could talk to you forever, man. It's just such great stuff. Can you give us some insight into kind of what you were just touching on there, which is the financial model of these things? When you're having to discount something $10,000, for the salespeople, is it harder for a salesperson to get enthusiastic about selling an EV when I can sell a Maverick so much easier and faster? When you're taking those, are you making at least something even when you're discounting it that much, and because Ford's kicking it through? Like, I don't know how
yeah,
deep you can get into that or what you can say, but like, yeah, what can you
yeah.
share about that model?
We do, and when we have something that's discounted down, we discount it down, but credit the vehicle, so the salesperson's still making it like if it was sticker, so pricing, so they're still making the money, so that way they're not going, not trying to sell an EV or whatever. But we do actually have dedicated EV specialists. We have, I think, about four guys that are focused on EV. And I think all of them have Mach-E's now with the great Mach-E leases that was going on. I think they're all driving. In fact, one of them went to Branson, Missouri from here, which is a little bit of a trip for the weekend. And he actually did struggle with a charger, and he called me and was like, "Hey, can you help me?" And so that 20 when you're talking about that support will be really nice for people to be able to, if they're having struggling new people and that kind of thing. But we do have specialists that have to have the training for EV and such, so they're dedicated EVs. So if we get a lead or something on one of those, because now the way they have that with the Lightning, especially, you kind of comes in a sense as a request, or somebody that's here that needs an EV specialist. So we do the same thing with Bronco. We have Bronco specialists. We have our performance guys too that really need to know that product well, the performance ones, the Roushers and such. That way they're dedicated. They're very educated. And when you're trying to learn all these models, I don't know what Ford has, 15 models, different models. Having some specialists on the Bronco, that they drive the Broncos, or the EV ones that drive the EVs, it's good that they know, the product well, because that's important. So
Yeah, with Raptor and Tremor, there's a whole lot of variation there. And what I love about your expertise is how you said you can get such value out of something like the Maverick without paying for the Tremor package. You're giving people exactly what they needed, the value they needed at. And I do think that expertise just goes a long way towards that dealership experience. So good on you guys for doing it that way. Are you guys doing the DC chargers at any point, or have you guys backed away
yeah,
from
we
that? Or
have we have four of them.
oh
I mean,
wow,
we have
four.
you can charge up to four cars. We just got those done and installed. We're getting two level twos as well.
Okay,
They haven't come in yet. They're going to be, and we put it in our customer parking. Still got to get the blue lines and everything, so people will stop parking there.
yeah.
I pulled up today and I'm like, what is that Dodge Ram doing there? I heard the Ram 1500 doing in that spot. I'm like, that's
Blocked
for
by a
EV.
gas car and a Dodge.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a Ram. But no, we have two. One of them right now, the SIM card that came with it is had to be replaced. So we're down to two right now. But they're already. I mean, as soon as they turned those on, they showed up on the thing. And that first day, we had a couple people that were driving through that stopped and charged on them,
That's awesome.
which is pretty cool. And I use them too. So
Have you done a video on those at all? I'd love to see you do a video if you haven't. I
um,
might have missed it if you did.
no, I haven't. I haven't.
Yeah,
So, but
yeah.
yeah.
I'd
Our
love
So
to see
local
you walk
dealership,
through those.
our local dealership put the stations in, and I went to charge at it because I was really low one day, and they were not on the line yet. I guess nobody had tried to use it, and
Ah,
they were in and plugged in. But if you went to the terminal, the card reader wasn't activated yet, and it said you had to use the app. And then I went to the app, and it wouldn't connect to the system. It said that they were in use. And so then I downloaded Shell Mobile to see if that would work, and it wouldn't work. So I haven't tried it in the last 3 weeks since the last time I tested it. It's now
yeah,
saying 4.4 available, so I might go back and try to give it a shot. Maybe they fixed it since then. But other than
yeah.
that, no,
Yeah,
it's
ours we didn't go through Ford's. Ours don't say Ford on them. We actually went outside because we got some state funding and such. So we went outside Ford to do those, but they came in. I think they still need to
but
inspect them to get certified because they got to come and inspect them. But and we got to get the one SIM card first before we can have them come out and inspect them. But yeah, it was cool to see them go in. It took a long time. I was like, come on, let's go, let's get these in.
what brand did you end
But
up going
yeah,
with? If you don't mind me
Yeah.
asking.
they're what are they? I thought they were EV Goes, but I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't think that's right. It's
You
one I haven't actually heard of around here. We see a lot of Electrified America around here and charge points and such. And EV Goes. It's usually the main three that we see in Kansas. And so it's not even one of those. What is it? I hear.
So
A
you
lot of
got to
time
do a
EVgo
video, Tim.
uses the Delta
Yes.
units, but there's Delta ABB. I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah,
nonetheless.
they're 180 amp or 80 kilowatt, I mean, which is nice. It's over the 150 that Ford can utilize, but which is good. So and then I don't know what the two stage or the level twos are going to be. Probably 60, I'd assume, but I don't know. But it's kind of nice having them and having them here. And what's great is where we parked it. There's usually what we call it on the bricks. There's a customer. There's some sold parking spots on the other side, and there's spots where we can put a couple vehicles. Typically, is where we put those. And so there's still room on the other side of the chargers, and we always will put a Mach-E or a Lightning there. So
Perfect.
somebody comes up and charges, and they can look at a new Mach-E or a new Lightning right there just across the way. So, and they can walk the lot. So I charged at a dealership one time in Kansas City, and that's what I did. I stopped and charged. I went and walked their lot. So it was kind of fun. But anyway, that's kind of the goal. But so.
Well, as we wrap up the episode, Tim, leave us with one bit of trivia and then tell us where we can find you. So, do you recall the first vehicle you sold? Do you recall what that was?
Ford Explorer,
Nice.
2000 Ford Explorer. So the first vehicle I sold. So I remember the customers. So you can come in still, and get vehicles from us still. So
That is awesome. And
yeah.
where can folks find you? Because I know you're on YouTube. I've seen you on X. I know you're on LinkedIn. Like, tell the folks how to find you in your videos and
Yep.
when you stream.
Yep. Most social medias you can just search Ford Video Guy is usually what I do on Instagram, Threads, and I am still on X, and then also our YouTube channel is Long MacArthur. So right back here is Long MacArthur. It's a backdrop we use. I'm at the dealership now, so Long MacArthur is where we do most of the video content and everything. I have a personal channel, Ford Video Guy YouTube channel, but it's more about stuff I've been doing to the Bronco and stuff like that. And I got the Mach-E rally. I need to get some videos on it for that channel too. But so anyway,
And
but
I
yeah.
think you'll still ship to people when they're buying it. And
Yeah, we've kind of changed how we were wording that now. It was like what we were doing was if you finance with us, then we'll pay up to the first $1,000 of the shipping cost to ship it to you. Instead, what we're doing is if you finance, we're just going to discount 1,000, and
okay,
then we'll figure out, if you want to use that towards the shipping, then we can. But because there are people that didn't cost up to over $1,000 that they weren't getting benefit of that, so we just said, let's just make it simple, so that we do that for people that are getting vehicles from us, and then we ship them all over. We just finished out a month today, so over about 30% of our business is outside the state of Kansas. So
very cool.
yeah,
Josh,
Awesome.
you want to bring us home?
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's definitely cool to see all the unique conversations, and hearing from a dealer in Kansas it's a different take on the EV market. I think Kansas is probably more similar to Tennessee than Kansas is similar to California and the EV space as that goes. And so a lot of that is relatable content as far as the pricing and understanding the values that, people are holding dear, and something at like the Maverick making sense, and things like that. So I appreciate you coming and sharing your insight. I'm sure we'll have you back on at some point to share more about how things are going, and we can kind of go from there. But once again, thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. If you have any other questions, comment below. But we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.